Don't fucking stare at me, I am not in the mood. And just saw some kid's face get mashed and bloody like it just came out the womb. These power structures are not real, but you're feeling that you're better than me because of your job. You're cleaning toilet bowls and pissy shitty steak made boxer shorts locked up. You're no boss, you're a slave. They want us to believe that some of us are greater than others in here, but it's all distracting.
Let's talk about that Pat the Bunny split that you did.
Yeah, that's another big part of that era.
I mean, the song Prison Spork, like,
Yeah.
super fucking real. Like,
Yeah, Prison Sporks. So I wrote those lyrics as a poem without having a guitar nearby. I wrote it as I wrote a lot of poems when I was in prison. And that was just one that I wrote that I kind of, when I got out, I worked it to some music, you know what I mean? Um, I just thought prison was corny in a lot of ways, and the ways that people thought that they had power over one another while we're all like less than human in there. I remember someone like working a laundry job thinking that they're the best, or like a kitchen job, or these weird power dynamics within the prison system. That's what that song's about. Um, I was annoyed when I wrote that song. I was like, these guys are fucking idiots. All of us are less than human in here, and yet we're battling over who gets a loaf of bread or whatever. It's like, so yeah. Pat the Bunny. I had first met Pat the Bunny 2006, I want to say, when I put out They Hate Francisco Falls. It might have even been right before that was even out. I used to go by Johnny Hobo on the freight trains at the time. It was some of his earliest shows he did with his brother Michael. And we played at a place called The Nest in Bridgeport, Connecticut together. And I know at the time, not a lot of people knew who he was because he played in a little corner, and he didn't bring anybody. Maybe a couple people. I didn't bring anybody. I think there might have been 15 people at that show, and I probably brought half, and maybe he brought a couple. And they did this really like energetic, awesome set with wash tub bass, and it was dope. Johnny Hobo, I remember trading CDs with them. Michael and Pat. That's when we first met. And then Pat, within that year, I think Pat became like a cult hero and like started he became this really important figure in folk punk. The next time I played with him, there were 100 kids there that knew every fucking word. So this was like a big shift for him. At that time, I was like, I remember playing after Pat after that time, and I was like, I never want to open for Pat, or I never want to play after Pat again. Yeah, I remember that feeling, and he ended up changing his name shortly after that to Wingnut Dishwashers Union, and starting a band with that, and then eventually was Ramshackle Glory. And I actually helped, you know, some I helped do the layout for the Wingnut Dishwashers Union. Um, and then I also distributed Ramshackle Glory. So I was always kind of involved in the background because my very good friend Pepe um, ran the label that put that stuff out. So it was really Pepe's idea to link us up and do this split. I remember very, I remember being on parole in 2014 on a parole tour, because I had a parole officer who would let me leave for like a few days at a time to go do shows. I remember being in Las Vegas. Yeah, he was super cool, actually.
That sounds crazy.
I got very lucky because he knew that was my job. You know what I mean? And I was struggling to get anything else at the time, really, as a felon. And like they wouldn't let me drive Uber. They wouldn't let me deliver. I don't know the shit. I was getting red flag left and right. I got fired from being a dog walker. Shit like that, because of my case. And I remember talking to Pat on the phone. I was in Vegas. This is while I'm on parole. and we're discussing like ideas for when we meet up. So um, we eventually met up in Connecticut. I had my homie record us, my homie John recorded us, and John Conine in Milford, Connecticut. And we recorded everything basically with 3 mics live. And I went back and did overdubs of stuff like, friends playing accordion or banjo, um, horns, all this stuff came in later, but all the bass recordings for the split were all live acoustic. Um, Pat came to Connecticut. He did his side, and we went on a tour. And it was just Pat, myself, and Pepe, and Lee, Pepe's wife, now wife, was on some of it. She happened to get arrested during that time. It was all a very dramatic time, but it was also a legendary time. Like I remember watching Pat record these songs and being like, "This is magic, capturing magic here." Felt it in the air, and it also really developed our friendship. Like we'd known each other for a long time, but we became friends that tour and that trip. The whole idea of how the split was released vinyl only, and with the zine and the interviews where we're interviewing each other and the art, everything, most of that was Pepe's idea. So I think we were very involved in it though as well. I was mostly really involved with the um, recording. John Conine recorded the the basic tracks, but I ended up recording all the stuff, the flourishes, you know what I mean? Ended up sending it to my friend Richolas in Florida, who mixed it. And yeah, so it took a little while to finally finish it, but it became something else, you know what I mean? Like that split is there's a mythology built around that split. You know what I mean? I think a big part of that was that it was Pat's final release as Pat the Bunny. It was his goodbye to the industry for almost 10 years now. So um I can say now that he has made his first record in 10 years, and it's coming out soon under a different name. So
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome.
and it's totally different. It's like a different thing, but it's definitely Pat, you know.
Word, word.
I can listen to it like nonstop anytime I can. So
Word.
so yeah, that opened a whole new world for me. It introduced me to the connection to Pat, introduced me to this whole folk punk scene, and suddenly I started seeing a lot of these kids coming to my shows and learning my songs and covering my songs. If you notice online covers of my songs, it's mostly like folk punk kids doing their interpretations of my songs. And I think that's really cool. It's like a whole new, it was another generation. It was a younger generation. It was outside of hip hop, and it was exciting. It was cool. And I really don't think Codefendants would exist without that connection to Pat, because I don't think, in fact, I know it wouldn't exist without that connection to Pat, because of Pat, I was able to do certain things in the punk rock world that caught Sam and Mike's attention, that caught the attention of Sam King and Fat Mike. If it wasn't because of Pat, I don't think that would have ever passed, been on the radar.
Are you sure that you died for our mortal sins? Or was it just a hoax to try and make the ladies love you?
So So let's talk about this Elm Street Sessions.
Elm Street Sessions. Yeah, I hadn't released a record in a while. I had been touring super hard. As I said, Broken Bone Ballads and the split with Pat sort of like opened a whole new market for me. I started touring super hard. I went through a breakup in 2017 and I was just like, fuck it, I'm going everywhere, you know. I went to Europe for months and months at a time, almost moved there at some point, to Prague in the Czech Republic. And I think I was about to do a tour, and I was like, man, I don't have any merch, like at all. So I went to my friend Sam Carlson's house in New Haven, Elm Street, and we just sat down and recorded one take live thing, and I put it on a CD. And that's the Elm Street Sessions. So I want to say that was 2018. Is that correct?
2018 is correct, yes.
Yeah. So I didn't have anything else to even bring to a show. So I was like, okay, it'll be a CD only thing. Eventually, with time, it ended up making its way to digital. But yeah, it was CD only for years. And and during that time, the reason there's a lot of overlap with Sad Fat Luck is because I was already in the process of like mixing, finishing Sad Fat Luck at that
Glory
time.
on stage don't last enough. Night after night, still trying to catch that rush. They're watching me hang myself for rounds of applause. Back at your town again, like a half-assed Santa Claus. With bags of merch at a truck stop, whistling Christmas tunes at the gas pump. Feel like Pat and wanna quit rapping punk. Half my friends are dead from tragic accidents, bad habits, and madness, and the other half's locked up. If I'm ever done from an airplane crash or drugs, just call it what it was, motherfucker. That's sad, fat luck. Yeah.
Sad Fat Luck didn't end up coming out till April 2019. So, but yeah.
Which is another fucking phenomenal album, Sad Fat
Thank
Luck.
you.
I rock that one regularly. It's the one that I present to other people when I'm like, hey, you need to check out some Ceschi because
Yeah, that's what I would recommend too. Really. Yeah. And so I don't know if you're ready to talk about that already, but Sad Fat Luck was like I was motivated as fuck by the end of 2018. But Sad Fat Luck had started as this kind of like EP idea that I was gonna do a split EP with this dude Astronautilus who we were touring with, who had brought us on the road. He never really, he never really took the split too seriously. So I was kind of left with this EP, um, with some of the songs that ended up on Sad Fat Luck, but it was like this unfinished kind of half-assed thing that did not feel finished to me. And if you've learned anything from this conversation, I don't really like putting shit out like that. So it took a long time for me to regain inspiration, but I must say I had this burst of inspiration touring Europe with my friend Serengeti in 2018 and my bandmates in Anonymous INC, my brother David and Max Heath, who's a child actor. Um, we all went out to Europe for the first time together, played some badass shows, and we met up with Serengeti and Video Dave, some buddies of mine from Chicago. And during that tour, I had like this, I don't know, my writer's block ended, and I had like a few breakthroughs where I wrote the song Sad Fat Luck. Factor happened to send me a folder of beats, and I wrote that song Sad Fat Luck driving from Berlin to Amsterdam to return Serengeti's wallet and all personal possessions that he had forgotten. He had drunkenly left them somewhere in Berlin. So I actually kind of had a few breakthroughs. Ended up within that last fall of 2018, I wrote the last, I want to say, 4 songs that fleshed out Sad Fat Luck. Yeah. In fact, we're so far with the EP that we have test presses of the EP before it was ended up becoming 13 songs, man. So 4 or 5 songs were added by the end of 2018. Went back to the drawing board. It was like, stop the presses. This we're not gonna approve this test press. And
Literally stop the presses. That's awesome.
yeah, for real, literally. And so yeah, and I think, I made some songs I'm really proud of. And that final session, the songs included Sad Fat Luck, the song Daybreak, the song Sans Soleil, which was a an emotional fucking, heavy place for me. And I think the last song, the album Bono Drag Tape, I think they were all done around the same time. And yeah. Yeah, as well as some stuff that ended up being on the Sans Soleil album.
Which came out the same year.
Yeah, so the
It's such a gift to be. It's such a gift to be
so I had this kind of, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like manic. Um, and my best friend since childhood, a lot of friends had died that year. Scotty Sixo had passed away a few months before. I was in this space of grief. My friend Bender died spring of 2018. Then it was like month after month after month, people dying. Finally, New Year's Eve, my best friend since I was like 8 years old, John Nagel, or 7 years old. John Nagel, who did most of the art on a lot of these records, he died here. He was in a coma New Year's Eve. I got the phone call, flew to Oakland. So by the first days of 2019, I was like on this manic wave of grief that can happen sometimes. When you see a lot of people die around you, sometimes you get this burst of energy to live and to create and to fuck, make shit happen. Um, so that's what happened. And I went to Canada, which was like my safe space. It was up in Saskatoon at Thatcher's house. And fucking, it was a place where I could just unleash and go wild creatively in his basement and just be in tears and just record all these songs. And by the end of it, oh, Jobs is another song that kind of came from that, which is sort of like almost like a mini, but yeah, that came from those sessions too. Um, yeah, by the end of it, I was like, well, we have like at least 2 albums worth of material. I decided then and there that this was not just going to be Sad Fat Luck, that it was going to be like a trilogy. And I was just like on it. I had no girlfriend. I had some money. I had a lot of freedom. And I had like this, there's a freedom that comes from grief when you feel like you're losing everything around you. There really is a freedom that comes from it. And yeah, that's what was going on. I um I was on fire creatively, and that was stopped by, by the time April 2019 came around, I got this like 7-piece band version of Sad Fat Luck together, and we toured
The
in the
Sad
way that I
Fat
wanted
Band.
to, like a dream tour for me, like presenting my solo music in the most epic way I could. But that also cost a lot of money. It was really difficult to do, and I was funding it all. So,
So was that the Sad Fat Band?
yeah, it was the Sad Fat Band. And that included some members of like Ramshackle Glory. And, all of us were like flying into places. And, we had like Jane Boxall on like full vibraphone. And, just like it was an epic show. It was an epic tour. Never will happen again like that. And Yeah, it was dope. I'm glad we did it. By the summer of 2019, I was pretty much broke. I couldn't bring I couldn't bring the Sat Fat band to Europe. So I was like, yeah, they're not coming. It's just gonna be me. And some people were like, yeah, you're getting paid less, whatever. I found myself like depressed by like August 2019. I found myself depressed in a little ass European car driving alone, doing like 20 shows in a row in Europe.
Huh.
You know what I mean? And just making ends meet so I could press and so I can finish this trilogy and get it out there. Um, my manic state had officially been done. I and I was feeling the other side of it, you know what I mean? But those two records were out. I think Sans Soleil was made in such like a manic emotional blur that it feels that way when you listen to it. It's like this collage record, but it also is for someone that's interested in discographies like you, Sans Soleil is the most representative of the entirety of my career, actually, out of any record I've ever made, because it does that on purpose. There's references to some of my first songs, my first influences. It's like it's a collage piece that, and that's supposed to be the wild side of Sad Fat Luck. If Sad Fat Luck is the pop album, Sans Soleil is like it's like, you know, crazy cousin that's been or crazy twin that's been locked in the closet or something wild out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bring Us the Head of Francisco Falls is the combination of them both, really, I think.
I
So
don't know what it means to go slow, and the feeling that you go into my soul. But deep down, I'm hoping I'll grow old. I don't know what it means to go slow, and the feeling that you go into my soul. But deep down, I'm hoping I'll grow old.
yeah,
Year was stolen along. I
this
mean, this
guitar
guitar
was
was
stolen.
stolen along with years of our lives.
Yes. So as I was saying, we're approaching the end of 2019, and in 2019, I had promised people three albums. In fact, 400 people had bought pre-ordered my trilogy in 2019. Um, and I was only able to send them two of those records. The reason being was that I fell into such deep depression. I couldn't finish the last part of it. I was like, it needs more work, it needs more work. I had this giant collection of songs I didn't know what to do with. I couldn't wrap my head around what the actual album was. You know what I'm saying? So it was very frustrating, and I was broke, and I was in some like brutal loans, and I was just kind of like, I was kind of when you're in depression, it's just like the biggest fog over any of your clear thinking. And I was right there. I was just in this kind of shitty zone. Then pandemic hit. So on top of all of that happening, pandemic hit. I'm in Los Angeles in another like dead end relationship that had finished, but I'm like living with this woman after being broken up and just kind of like depressed as hell for many reasons. And I'm also nostalgic as hell. I don't know about you, but when pandemic hit and we're on lockdown, I just it reminded me a lot about being in prison and wanting to listen. Like in prison, I wanted to listen to like Alice in Chains all the time, or like bands I liked when I was 10, 11 years old, and Nirvana. I got like, I think I got Metallica, Ride the Lightning. I was able to trade soups for CDs. So long story. I got Ride the Lightning, Met- Nirvana's Greatest Hits, which is like such a weird little collection because they only had a few albums left. And then Alice in Chains Greatest Hits. These are the things I was able to find in prison. And those are the kind of records I was wanting to listen to. I just got deeply nostalgic for a time of simplicity. And I think that happened to me again when when pandemic hit and I was on lockdown, and I started writing all these songs that were reminiscent of, punk songs I would have liked as a teenager. And I think songs like Not Off, people were like, who are you talking about? I'm talking about like one of my first girlfriends. And it's a mixture of characters, but that song is not written about modern. That was written about a way former love. Do you know what I mean? And watching someone go through addiction and sort of processing this so many years later. 2020 BC. Obviously, I started writing that in March of 2020. I didn't finish it until I want to say maybe like fall of 2020. It took me a long time to process that. Um, yeah, I all I knew is that in one day, 40 of my shows were canceled. I was stuck in LA, um, and on lockdown, on a very severe lockdown, and all of my plans to finish Bring Us the Head of Francisco Falls canceled. So I couldn't go up to the studio and work on the hip hop tracks with Factor. I could just I ended up driving across country from LA back to Connecticut. And the dude that recorded the split with Pat, I hit him up and I was like, hey, can we just do a weekly exercise or bi-weekly exercise of recording my acoustic songs? Because I had compiled now a bunch of demos. Um, so I would just go in every other week, and the same way we recorded the splits, like 3 mics, he recorded me. And we did that over and over and over again until I found takes I liked. And I would do it in different keys. Like sometimes I'll put a capo on somewhere and change it up, push it so my voice would sound higher in a different key or whatever, you know what I mean? Just like trying different ways. Okay, 6 songs in a row recorded. And then I'd go home, listen to them, be like, okay, maybe none of those work. Just kept doing that over and over again until I had enough songs that it was like an entire guitar-based album. And I specifically remember the song 2020 BC because I only did that one 2 times. The first time I did it, I I believe the first take is the one we used. It's just a live take of that. So,
Huh.
and I only did it twice because he said, give it another shot if you want. That was it. So a lot of it was like this live kind of recordings. Eventually, because of Codefendants starting, I ended up meeting Baz, who ended up mixing those songs and adding some instruments, but really was just me and my band members. Like my brother played drums on it. Max Heath, um, aka Child Actor, did a lot of instrumentation. Alexandra Burnett, um, Adam Matlock, a lot of Vikel Janes played bass on it. Yeah, it was a lot of old friends on there. And the reason I put it out in that way, I put it out for free, pay what you want on Bandcamp, because I just wanted to give people kind of something to hold them over while I was finishing Bring Us the Head of Francisco Falls, which had become this monstrous thing that I couldn't finish. That's the story of that. In the end, I do think I made my greatest guitar album. I do. I think it's like some of my best like guitar songwriting I've ever done. So.
Word, word.
Wipe your fucking face. Yeah. Only real ones allowed around me these days. Give me some space, okay? This ain't the day I'ma fade. Hooray. Piccolo, I'm green skin, white sand. Miss me, I'm a Martian pussy cat scan. Backhand compliments, bloody floor plans. Hey, hey.
You mentioned the Codefendants. How did that all start? That would have been around the same time frame,
Yeah,
2000.
exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't have finished. I don't think I would have finished This Guitar Was Stolen without Codefendants. Uh, so in 2021, man, I keep going back to these kind of waves, right? Like manic depressive waves. I know by the time I remember I was talking about when I finally finished that song 2020 BC. I was kind of on a health wave at the end of 2020, I would say, like doing pretty well. My credit was back up, like I saved up some money. I was making some whatever, what I mean? I got a few grants and loans, whatever. Um, by uh by the winter of 2021, yeah, I was falling mentally, falling really bad. I was really sick of Connecticut. And I went and I was going to therapy every week. And I remember my therapist suggesting that I take a trip. I took a trip out to Vermont and I hadn't written a song in months and months and months. Um, I took a trip out to a cabin in Vermont, actually close to where Pat the Money is from. And it was snowing, it was like a crazy snowstorm. I kind of locked myself into this cabin with a wood stove for 4 or 5 days. And I had a bit of a breakthrough where I decided I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. Lockdown, COVID, I don't give a fuck. I'm leaving. And I left. I went to Puerto Rico to visit my family, visit my father, my grandmother who's old and who's still with us. My family there, my cousins, you know, and to be in the sun, not be in the snow anymore. And during 2020, I should say that Sam King had been reaching out to me. He put out a record with his band Get Dead called Dancing with a Curse. And then um, during one of those interviews, he shouted me out as someone he's listening to. So people were like, man, this band made this great punk record. And he shouted you out as an influence. You gotta, you know, no one said you gotta link up with him, but I did reach out to him online. And it turned out he had been following me since 2018. He saw me at Gilman Street at a very special show at 924 Gilman Street that we played for many reasons I'm not going to get into right now. He, in fact, even filmed my set and sent it to Fat Wreck at the time. Aaron from Fat Wreck said, absolutely not. I will never sign that. But during that time in 2020, um, Sam was getting divorced. We were both in these weird precarious parts of our lives, and we started just talking on the phone and sharing stuff. He did one of the Fake Four was doing these weekly like live stream things that my friend Nikki Anarchy set up on Twitch, which was really cool. It was like a way for us all to gather every week on Fridays when nothing was happening, no shows were happening. And Sam did one of those. And at some point he was like, "Yo, come to LA. I'm painting Fat Mike's house," because Sam was a house painter and he's a friend of Fat Mike's for years. But he painted Mike's whole compound over there and was kind of living over there. He called me. He's like, "Yo, I got this song idea." That song that he sent me the demo of was a song that became Abscessed. But I flew from Puerto Rico all the way to LA and we recorded Abscessed on that trip as well as Living Las Vegas with Tumex. So those were the first two Codefendant songs recorded actually.
But that one didn't come out until after This Is Crime,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just how it is, man. We ended up having some sort of like creative breakthrough and I swear we recorded at least at least like 10 or a dozen ideas, maybe more, maybe 20 in the months to come. I sort of moved there. I sort of like hang out at Fat Mike's a lot and at Sam's up in San Jose, going back and forth, doing whatever the fuck we were doing, man. So just becoming really good friends, really quick, fast friends because we had so much in common and we had both lost a lot of our good friends. They died. So there was a lot of that. It was kind of like Sam really reminded me of some of my best friends I had lost, and I don't know, man. It inspired something in us to make this project. So it went from making like one collaborative track with this band I love, Get Dead, where I was just gonna be a guest vocalist on it, um, to making 6, 7 demos. Um, we ended up showing like 3 demos to Fat Mike, and he like basically was like, "What do I have to do to be a part of this?" and signed us on the spot. And there's other parts of that story, but that's pretty much how it went down. And it was a lot of me kind of like sacrificing to be out there as much as possible. Um, kind of leaving my life out here to be out there as much as possible, finish this record. And yeah, it was all worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, and This Is Crime Wave is a fucking great album.
Thank you. I think
All over the place musically,
yeah,
which is kind of your MO.
which I think anyone who knew my music would expect almost like understand. But people who didn't know my music were like, "What the fuck is this?" And to some people, that really caught them off guard. I remember seeing like the injection of hip hop in the punk world really like piss some people off at first. So like the purists or whatever, like the Fat Wreck purists, especially because Fat Wreck had such a sound that it had developed over so many years, which I respect. I mean, I respect Mike so much for everything he's done over the 40 plus years. I mean, and including Fat Wreck, it's an incredible accomplishment. Um, the way I look at Mike, it's like that's DIY on the biggest level there is, you know,
Dude
always
had his
doing
own
it.
fucking TV show on Fuse back in the day, you know?
Yeah, but even that, dude, they funded that themselves and sold it to Fuse. Do you know what I mean? Like everything about that was like our way. You know what I mean? The whole way, including the finale is like that. So I have nothing but respect for Mike. And we broke down real fast, I just feel comfortable with those dudes. They're just
Yeah, how fucking cool was that though? Like being a huge fan of NoFX and then you're like hanging out at old boy's house.
yeah, and I'm not gonna say I loved and I've dug NoFX songs since I was a young teenager. I wasn't a huge fan. Like I know huge fans of NoFX. My cousin, my cousin Ernesto is a huge fan of NoFX. He flipped the fuck out. When I got to bring him on stage with NoFX, he flipped out. He even did a poorly ill-fated stage dive. You know what I'm saying? The motherfucker like fell on security. Like he flipped out. He's a huge fan. I don't deserve to be called a huge fan of NoFX. I am now. I fucking love those dudes and their whole crew. I became an even bigger fan of NoFX after the 2 years of touring. But yeah, at the time I was just like an admirer, and I love some of their stuff. Now I'm like a big fan.
Oh, I was a huge fan back in the day. I prefer their 90s years myself,
Yeah.
but what do you do?
If you look back though, like man, they have really solid discography.
They really do. They really do. And even their fucking early 80s shit was still good. I mean, like
Oh yeah,
it's a little
really.
fucking silly.
I
I
think,
mean,
I think there's like a clear marker of when they got good. You know what I mean? But yeah, no,
but
they're
there's some charm. There's some charm.
yeah. There was always charm. They're just funny motherfuckers. So
Just like the
I
old
think it was that S&M Airlines record where they started kind of.
cleaning it up. But like I said, there's some charm to them, just like their first couple Ween albums.
Yeah, well, I love that stuff too, man. I'm a big Ween fan. I've gotten to see Ween. Yeah, the Ween's dope as fuck.
But their
Yeah,
first couple albums are a little rough to listen to at first.
for sure. Even though maybe is Chocolate and Cheese one of their first records?
That was when they started cleaning it up. The couple
Okay,
albums
yeah.
before
You're
that
talking
are a
about like
little rougher.
yeah. That's probably my favorite one, but I don't know, man. The Mollusk later on is so
Was
sick.
fucking clean. That one was great. That one's great.
That's like not just clean; it's really interesting production.
Well, yeah,
Even
the
quite
story
peppy.
behind that one is they rented a beach house and ate a bunch of acid, and that's what they got.
Yeah, That's what you get with acid. But but yeah, man, Codefendants, absolute fucking life changer, man. Honestly, I really was thinking of every way to get out of music at that point. Um, I knew I had to finish Bring Us the Head, but I did not want to. I didn't think I wanted to continue a life of music. I wanted to open like a vegan restaurant. I was this close to starting a do a new chapter in my life. You know what I mean? And that's why some people like I have like a couple like loud fans are like drop the California bros or whatever like in my comments. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. They are the reason I'm still making music like publicly. I would make music, but not you wouldn't hear it ever if it wasn't for those two guys. They're the ones making me make shit for real. And I couldn't be more grateful because they've showed me absolutely changed my life. You don't think when you turn 40 you're gonna have your big break. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's
That should have happened when you were
this
27.
year I played to, 20,000 people in one show. Like what the fuck? Like that's I never in my life ever even wanted that, but I never expected it to happen, that's for sure. Um, but I mean, fuck, I'm doing it. So
Yeah, that's fucking crazy, man. That's crazy. Yeah, like I was about to say, that should have happened when you were 27, and the fact that you survived past that.
yeah, we were this close to things happening, but we were pretty hard-headed about what we wanted to do. I think Toka maybe had that chant. I think Toka had a lot of things in line to be that. Uh, we we fucked it up, but there was a lot of moving parts, a lot of
You broke up when you were
we were a little immature too, Like I think we should have sucked it up a little more and kind of gone with the flow. But we were so serious about our art, we didn't want anyone touching it, fucking with it. Now I'm like, now I welcome criticism or input. Like when I was 25, hell no. I didn't want to hear anything.
Fuck you, Frank Foss, for being alone. You won't find friends like that again. Time turns to swell, leaving you dry. And sure.
So let's talk about this tier 3 record that I haven't got to listen to.
Huh.
The famous Mechanical Denticles.
Oh yeah, man. So
Fabulous
that
Mechanical.
is so yeah, so over the time where I was really devoting everything to Codefendants and building Codefendants, Nikki Anarchy, who's been one of the main people working with Fake Four, convinced me to do this kind of like subscriber service with Bandcamp. And it was cool. It was like um going back through a lot of these unreleased things or these unfinished songs and projects. And I called it Foragers because I was digging up a lot of like collaborations I had never put out and just cool shit. It's basically what became my Patreon now. Um, but one of the special things was that the top tier 3 people of people who subscribed for the whole year, I ended up at first I was gonna do different things, but I ended up giving him this beautiful piece of vinyl, you know, that is very rare. And the songs that you hear, the recordings on side A are with a band from Germany, my friend Oscar Olsen's band, which is the Fabulous Mechanical Denticles. We call them Denticles. Part of this collective out of Germany called Knertz.
Which
And we had done some work together. It kind of got thrown to the side in the chaos of life. And then, so at least it's out, some of it's out there for people to hear.
and they do have another release from 2014 that is more accessible and not $500 up on eBay right now.
Oh, they do? Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think yeah, Foragers is going to be expensive because it's really rare.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it's only 100. Oh, maybe it was 200 copies of that. But yeah, it's pretty rare.
Yeah,
But
500
yeah,
and you could score yourself a copy today.
yeah, $500, just a little $500 record.
Yeah. No big deal. No big deal.
Aches and pains will eventually fade. Scars are permanently here to stay. Try to be grateful for the moments, not trying to feel some type of way. It is frustrating to say the least, struggling to know what's wrong with me. Try to figure out what there are people left with questions that need answering. Do I need Nirvana lithium to analyze my youth experience? Do I need lessons and forgiveness to come to terms with the views from back then? All of us are victims in some way. My head's not yet sitting on a plate. Only wish that I could find a less destructive path to get me to the heavens.
All right, so we're almost approaching the end here.
We
huh?
are approaching the end, which makes me a little sad, right?
Makes me happy.
Well, you just expressed that. You just expressed that. So you in part 1 and 2, like your trilogy ended up becoming a quadrilogy.
It did, and I would say this Guitar Was Stolen is also kind of part of that. So it's kind of 5 parts. I would definitely include This Guitar Was Stolen in that sandwich or whatever. But yeah, man, as I said, there was so much stuff recorded that I didn't really know how to piece together. I think that's part of the reason I made the Patreon too, is because like some of it's just never gonna come out other than in those spaces. So I really struggled. At one point I wanted to make it a 4-part finale with like 4 EPs that made the whole. Instead, I made this 2-part finale. Finally got my shit together enough to finish it. And that was done. Yeah, I feel like about a year ago is when I finished the album, and now it's finally like hitting people's mailboxes and stuff.
Which the part 2 gets released on the 4th.
Yeah, on Bandcamp only. I've been kind of like serious about not making streaming a priority. I really want to make sure streaming is the last thing. Like they don't treat us like a priority. Those companies don't treat us like a priority, so I'm not going to make them a priority either. I understand it's very convenient, but convenience is not always the best thing for art. In fact, I would say it's the worst thing for art, but that's a whole nother thing.
Word.
I think comfort is a terrible it's a detrimental thing when it comes to art.
Well,
Comfort.
it's a detrimental thing to almost anything. Example
Yeah.
being, if I come up to this gas station right up here on the corner, they sell packs of ramen noodles for $4, and it's like that's
And you're like,
convenient.
dang, that's convenience right here. Yeah, I'm just gonna eat my fucking Twinkies and ramen and live like I'm on prison commissary for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
But then that's when you get food deserts and shit and fucking people in the hood eating like shit. I get it. It sucks. But it
but
is.
Bring Us the Head of Francisco Falls is going to be your last release as Ceschi. Do you have any future plans for music, or is it
Oh yeah. I mean, Codefendants is at the fucking top of our fucking like we're just getting bigger and bigger. It's crazy.
just no more Ceschi?
No more Chesky. If I do anything, we had started an Anonymous INC album, and like these are songs we've compiled over years, and we started recording it, meaning that we have like a dozen recordings that we never really finished. In 2018, we were recording it and touring and stuff, and never finished it. So hopefully I can go back to that. That'll be really cool.
Word. Oh, I forgot to bring up the beta. You had this
Yeah, the
beta
Anonymous
1 and
INC.
2 are floating around.
Yes. I had this like Seeds was this big project I wanted to do with Anonymous INC back in the early 2000s. After the 2001 album came out, that was supposed to be the next thing. I always used to joke, oh, it'll be out by 2012. It just never came out. So the things you hear on the beta EPs are things that would have been on Seeds. but I actually think we're gonna release an album eventually. I'm just gonna need the time to focus on it.
Word.
But yeah, all like the rough tracks are there. It's mostly vocals I need to get done. A lot of like the guitar, bass, keys, drums, all the drums are done. So it's pretty cool. I think that would be a record you're gonna dig. A lot of like weird, like off the wall, like time signature shit,
I,
genre shit stuff. So,
I love that shit. I love that shit.
yeah. So maybe that one day. I don't know.
I'm
I'm
I'm so
also finding like a lot of inspiration doing this Patreon. So I think if any like Chesky song comes out, like I recorded a rap song the other day for no reason. That'll probably just go on Patreon. I'm not gonna put it on streaming, none of that shit. So I'm just gonna keep it very central. I'm so sick of like making art for these tech companies to kind of leech off of. We make content for them. They're the ones who win. Yeah, we connect with our supporters that way, but I'd rather like centralize my space. You know what I mean? So,